Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. Well, this is the last webinar of 2022, so thank you so much for joining in. My name is Devina Nigam. I am a consultant at Atma. Atma is an accelerator for education. It's an interesting special webinar. As you may all know, that 3rd December every year is observed as the International Day for of persons with disabilities. The day really aims to promote awareness and understanding of disability, the issues, the matters related to disabilities, along with mobilizing support for the dignity, right, and the well-being of persons with disabilities. Keeping up with this theme, the sentiment, we're not limiting ourselves just to 3rd December. Therefore, also we present our December webinar. In today's webinar, we will talk about the importance of building inclusive and accessible communication by all organizations. Something very simple, something very basic, but very, very important. Our speakers today will address key points surrounding the why, what, and how of inclusive communication, be it text, audio, or visual. They will also spend time addressing specific myths surrounding disabilities, which oftentimes color and distort effective communication. Couple of things we look to take away from this conversation, this discussion, this webinar is what is the meaning of inclusive and accessible communication? What does that really mean? How does it look? What would it be? And the do's and don'ts of building effective communication. I want to quickly introduce our speakers. Our speakers today are Ketan Kothari and Krishna Warrior. Ketan is the managing consultant programs at Xavier's Resource Center for Visually Challenged, also referred to as XRCVC. He is a disability professional working in the field for the last 30 years. He has worked at a variety of places in leading roles, such as heading 3 departments at the National Association for the Blind, India, program officer, then advocacy manager at Sightsavers, India, and he presently works at XRCVC. His passions include inclusive education and accessibility for the disabled. He was involved in the advocacy for financial access, also advocacy for amendment to the Indian Copyrights Act 1957, both of which have yielded success. Welcome, Ketan. Our next speaker is Krishna Warrior. Krishna is the lead consultant, awareness and advocacy at XRCVC. He has over 30 years of experience in journalism and communication skill. After his career in journalism, he started working in the area of disability awareness. He has held trainings and sensitization workshops all over India for corporates like IBM, Deloitte, Sanofi, etc. And is currently inclusion expert South Asia with Hindustan Unilever Limited. He has held senior editorial positions in Reader's Digest, Hindustan Times, Midday, etc. Um, he's also trained students in various institutions like the IIT Bombay Monash Research Academy, St. Xavier's College, Sophia College, Casey College, Wilson College, Xavier Institute of Communications, etc. He loves trekking and playing table tennis. With that, handing it over to Krishna. I just want to call out that both Krishna and Ketan have very clearly said they'd love, should the audience have any questions or comments, to just raise your hands and they will let you in, unmute yourself and share your comments and questions during the session.
Thank you, Devina. Thank you, Atma. And thanks to everybody who's joined us today. Wonderful to see all of you. We're just 3 days away from Christmas, and I know that the festivities have set in. I was just taking a class today in the morning, and Santa Claus entered the class. Devina, it was a lovely thing. Everybody started singing and all of that. So lovely to see all of you taking the time out. Lovely to be back in an Atma event here. Today's topic is inclusive communication. And I'm sure Ketan here, who's joined us, who is somebody who was born with a visual impairment, has never seen the world the way you and I see the world, but sees the world all right in a very different way, in his own unique way. Uh, I am sure he has a lot to share about his own experiences with inclusive communication. But we all understand and we all know, as Devina was saying, that communication is the key. We're all storytellers here today. Every one of us believes that we are a storyteller, and that's what the world has become. Whether it's about Instagram, whether it's about Facebook, whether it's about all the other work we do, it's really about telling stories and telling them well. So one of my favorite quotes is from one of my favorite poets, and none other than Maya Angelou, the famous American poet who passed away a few years back. uh, Something that she said, which stayed with me all my life, is that people may forget what you said to them, people may forget what you did to them, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I think inclusive communication has so much to do with making people feel important, making people feel that they wanted. So, Ketan, let's start this conversation. Let's call it a conversation because that's what it is, much more than a webinar. What is inclusive communication, Ketan, and why is it important?
Well, good afternoon to all, and nice to be interacting with all of you. Uh, some of you may be wondering, why am I keeping my left thumb on the control key? Am I visible?
That part is not visible, Ketan, but we can imagine that you're keeping your
Yeah,
left hand
so
on it.
I'm keeping it because otherwise it just my screen reader keeps telling me who's entering, who's going, and I just can't hear Krishna. And so that is one inclusion leading to some amount of exclusion. Yeah, so firstly, communication by itself is very important, and communication is basically how we connect with each other. And uh, obviously, if we want all people in society, irrespective of their abilities, disabilities, or difficulties, or lack of them, want to be part of connections, and we need to have communication in an inclusive manner, which is accessible to all, and which all can participate in without much of a difficulty. And that is, and unless we have inclusive communication, the social purpose will not be served. We will be excluding a huge number of people, um, knowingly, unknowingly, and that will, in the long run, prove detrimental to social interest.
Yes, Ketan. So you spoke about why inclusive communication is important. And my question to you as a person with a lived experience of disability, a lived experience of visual impairment is would it be different for different disabilities, the way you make communication inclusive? Would it be the same rules that apply to all disabilities, or would there be some rules that are general but some rules that are specific to some disabilities?
No, I think because of the disabilities that vary, because disability, I must emphasize here, is not a homogeneous concept. It is a heterogeneous concept because there are many, many kinds of disabilities. And so obviously the rules of communication will vary differently. Now, somebody may say, oh God, if there are so many various different disabilities, and how many can I really take care of? But actually, we can, because what is required is common sense. It's no Greek or Latin to know what inclusive communication is. There's no some big science or rocket science that one needs to learn. See, for example, if you talk slowly, then probably people who are hearing impaired or who are hard of hearing can read lips, and they would be able to make out what we are talking. Also, uh, if we talk in a simple way, then people having intellectual disabilities would find it slightly easier. And so there are ways in which you can include all segments of society in your communication. So
You know,
it's
to add to what Ketan just said, I remember Ketan when so I work with Hindustan Unilever as a consultant, as Devina was pointing out in the introduction. And one of my jobs there, Devina, is to try and help that company to get in persons with disability into their workforce. So just last month, I was in Bangalore in the office there because we were recruiting some people, and there were two people with hearing impairment there. One person was hard of hearing and one person was totally deaf. So just to take from what Ketan said, I was speaking to both of them, and they were lip reading. And I was speaking very slowly, and I followed every rule that Ketan spoke about except one. At one point, I looked back at my slide to be able to see what was there on that screen. And that's the point at which, Ketan, they lost me, because for lip reading, it's very important that you also need to be visible to the person who is reading your lips. Not only do you need to be slow, but you also need to be visible. So just like Ketan said, there are so many disabilities. It's a wide spectrum. In blindness alone, I mean, most people say, oh, somebody is blind. So most people with blindness might be quite having the same requirement. Ketan, how much of that is true when we say that somebody who's blind would be like somebody else who's blind?
am I audible? Because I
Did
lost
we
Krishna.
lose Ketan? I think
Hello.
No, can hear you,
Hello.
just give
Ketan.
him a minute to come back.
Hello. Hello.
Is back.
So sorry. Because my connectivity is unstable, but yeah, the needs of all blind people are different, because some of us are people with low vision, who can see a bit, and others may be totally blind, like me. I always say that I am blind to seeing. I don't even know what seeing is all about, because I don't even have eyeballs. Now, those are rare cases. I am born blind. Most of us are not born blind. They become blind later in life. So it varies from person to person, and the requirements are also to that extent different. But having said that, you have to remember that again, all this is not rocket science. Why I'm saying this again and again is that when people hear that things are different, things are required in a different way, then people may start thinking, oh God, then how many things do we have to really remember? Actually, it's nothing. It's just a matter of habit. If you develop, then you don't need to go that extra mile. It's just a habit that will make you include most of us.
Right, Ketan. So, the two main forms of communication that we're all aware of, and I'm asking you this particularly from the perspective of vision impairment. The two main forms are written and oral, right? Do you find your disability to be a limitation or a drawback, or something when it comes to either oral or written communication, or both?
I mean, it is not a drawback, certainly not. It is a limitation, yes, to a certain extent, which can be overcome. It is not drawback, because when you say drawback difficult to overcome. Limitations can be overcome. There are alternatives that can be found and which can be
I think,
done in.
yeah.
Which am I audible?
Yeah,
Hello.
Ketan, your signal seems to be flickering. Maybe would you like to change and come into another room? You think that would help you?
Another room is something. No,
Because you
because
could come and sit in the room where I am sitting here. We could both be using our earphones, because the
okay,
signal
then
here seems to be much better.
okay, then give me some time. I'll need a
Sure.
minute.
Yeah, it won't take more than 2 or 3 minutes. Yeah,
Yeah, please
not to
bear
worry.
with me. Bear
Perfect.
with me.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yes. But in the meanwhile, I just wanted to ask all of you who joined in, I can see there are about 30 people on this call. How many of you, and this is a question that I ask many people when I take workshops on disability, how many of you have interacted with a person with disability or have had some level of interaction, maybe in school, maybe in college, maybe in the neighborhood, maybe in the workplace. I don't know whether we can have a show of hands here, but is there anybody who would like to? Yeah, Soumya, so you raised your hand. Could you just unmute and tell us a little bit about your experience? Who did you interact with? Was it easy? Was it difficult?
Sure, sure. It's a very old experience. I don't know if it counts, but when I was in second grade, we had a few students who had visual impairment, and it was really difficult for the teacher to sensitize other students on it. And I would often see those students getting bullied, and we would also compare, complain about it to the teacher. And it's a really old experience. It's a little blurry memory, but I do remember the pain those kids used to go through. It was really difficult for them. And teachers had like various sensitizing sessions with us, but for some reason, like it wasn't as effective. And then I changed school, so I don't know how that worked out, but that's how what I remember.
Devina, have you had any experience?
Yes, yes.
Would you like
Similar to
to?
what, sure. Similar to what Soumya was mentioning, in my college years, we had classmates that were visually impaired. I and they were while our classes were in English, but they preferred Hindi. So our professor would actually take extra classes in Hindi for the students. But we were all encouraged to sit together for the classes and study together, help each other. But I think that was the only, I don't know, there wasn't even sensitization, but we didn't know better. What else could we do? Um, so, yeah.
Yeah, Ketan is almost ready, but we'll just continue with this conversation till he's here with me in the same room that I am. He's just trying to set up laptop.
Perfect.
But it's very interesting. Most of us don't have too much of experience of interacting with persons with disability, and because we don't, that leads to many stereotypes in our own minds, many myths in our own minds. For example, one of the things that I hear people like Ketan constantly complaining about is that somebody with sight, when they speak to me, they speak louder than they usually do. What they don't realize is that the problem is here, the problem is not here. The problem is with my eyes, the problem is not with my ears. So it's not necessary for you to speak slower or louder than you speak with somebody else, because that is something that he's very capable of listening to. As Ketan joins us, and there's a couple of things that I wanted to demonstrate to everybody here as well about how Ketan actually sees on the laptop. So he uses something called a screen reader, and he was mentioning just earlier about how he had his finger on his keyboard because he was actually trying to block out extraneous sounds that came from the screen reader. The screen reader is so powerful that it can at some point also get invasive. What Ketan was telling us basically is that it reads out every single thing that is on the screen. So if there's a Zoom call like this, what happens is that it actually will read out even if somebody is entering the room, somebody is exiting the room, somebody is has raised his hand. All of this comes onto his screen reader. So disability is something, Devina, that frankly a lot of us know very little about. And the reason that a lot of us know very little about is that even though it exists around us very much, the thing is that probably we haven't paid as much attention to interacting with persons with disability as much as we need to. I started interacting about 10 years ago with persons with disability when I started working with XRCVC after I completed my career in journalism. And when I started out, there was very, very little that I knew. But over the years, I realized that some of the typical stereotypes that we may have, for example, one of the stereotypes that immediately comes to mind is that most people think that a person with disability would have a sixth sense. Now, that is actually not true at all. As Ketan jokes, we have typically five senses: the sense of sight, taste, touch, hearing, and smell. and he has only 4 of those. And when I do a workshop with Ketan, typically he always tells the audience, I don't have my 5 senses, so where is the question of having a 6th sense? The point being that what persons like Ketan do is that they use sensory substitution. And in sensory substitution, essentially what happens is that you substitute the 4 other senses that you have, which is a sense of taste, hearing, smell, and touch, to complement the fact that you don't have the sense of sight. So I saw something on the chat box. Difficulty would be more with both hearing and visual impairment unless there is a sign language, which not all may know. Yeah.
I'll come to that.
Very true, Ruvina. Ketan is here with me and he's itching to get back on the call. And he just said, I'll jump into that question. So let's just give it a minute while he joins us. He's almost here.
Krishna, you also want to tell us about screen reader. Not
Yeah.
sure if all of us
Yes.
know.
So I'll tell you a little bit about readers while Ketan is here. So a screen reader is exactly what its name suggests. It reads every single thing that is on the screen. So if you have your meeting chat on, just like I have it on here next to my screen, it has Devi Nigam Atma to waiting room participants right at the top. Below that, it has hi all, we will let everyone in at 2 p.m. Then it has Samir Karwande, good afternoon, ma'am. So every single thing that is there in your screen is read out to the person who is using a screen reader. And as messages keep coming, more and more messages keep coming in, all of these get read out to people with vision impairment. So when you're in a meeting, typically you'll find somebody like Ketan doing what I just did, which is using my earphone on one ear in order to listen to what my screen reader is telling me, and also keeping my other ear open for the other sounds that I need to hear, right? Nitasha has asked a very interesting question. People with disabilities are said to have a stronger sense of touch. Is that a myth? Super question, Nitasha. A stronger sense of touch, the answer is yes, they do have a stronger sense of touch, but the reason they do it is because they have been using it much more than you and I have been using it. So if you've been using something constantly, you've been using it for a very, very long time, you just get better at it. If you have bad handwriting when we were young, we kept being told, keep writing till you get better at it, and you get better at it. So that's exactly the reason why, Nitasha, it appears that somebody has a stronger sense of touch, and we instantly tend to conclude that their Ketan has just entered the waiting room. Wonderful. So we just tend to conclude that somebody was born with a stronger sense of touch, which actually is wrong. There he is. Hi, Ketan. Good to have you back. You just need to unmute. Yes, Ketan, we were missing you very badly.
I'm extremely sorry, but the technology was playing tricks as it does many times. Well, sorry for as I remember when we had first time a match being telecast from Pakistan directly in 1978. That also tells my age, actually. Sorry. But yeah, so you used to get, these sorry for the break kind of. So now I believe they say sorry for the interruption. So yeah, whatever. Sorry. So let's get back to business.
Krishna, you're on mute.
Sorry. Thanks for reminding me. Since both Ketan and I are in the same room, I was on mute. Otherwise, the voice would have echoed. So yeah, Ketan, we missed you, but at the same time, we made the best use of the time that was available to us to have a nice cozy chat about disabilities, about myths surrounding disabilities. And Nitasha came up with a very lovely question, which I thought you would be best equipped to answer. Nitasha's question in the chat box was, people with disabilities are said to have a stronger sense of touch. Is that a myth?
Yes, it is a myth. It's not a stronger sense of touch. Actually, what happens is we tend to optimize whatever senses we have preserved, in the sense that, well, then that would also tell you that I've got stronger sense of smell. But then my wife is blind and her sense of smell is, well, I mean, I don't really compliment her for that. Whereas her mobility is extremely good, whereas mine is, the less I say, the better. So it all depends. I mean, how you optimize your senses. There's nothing. See, we have to remember one thing, that most of us are not born with disabilities. So obviously, you're not going to get anything stronger. What happens is what we call sensory substitution. So since you can't see, the other four senses, you tend to optimally use them to achieve the little compensations that you can, since you don't have the benefit of sight.
Yes,
Back.
Ketan, I guess that answers Nitasha's question. But Nitasha, if you'd like to unmute or you'd like to put an additional or a supplementary question, please go ahead. And all of you, I mean, let's just make this a nice little fireside conversation, light a bonfire in this Zoom room. I know that that's not quite physically possible, but let's just do that and have a chat, because I think that's the best way to feed off each other, to learn from each other. But coming back, Ketan, to the written and the spoken communication part, from a perspective of somebody who's visually impaired, what really is the difference in inclusive communication for the spoken part, and what is it for the written part?
Well, when you write, whenever you write, firstly, you have to write in a clear manner in the sense that the document has to be formatted, well formatted, because otherwise the screen reader, you may miss a spelling error, but a screen reader will always mispronounce. So that is one thing. The other thing is, when you, for example, when you present a PDF document, you must ensure that the Word document that was done as a master document should have been very properly tagged and formulated, so that the PDF is accessible. Otherwise, many times PDF is read in a gibberish manner, so that the blind person cannot understand anything. And that's one reason why many of us don't like PDFs. PDF documents. So the clearer, the better. In fact, not only in communication, generally in life, the rule is the more organized you are, the better it is for you, and so also for disability. For example, I'm sorry for deviating a bit, Devina, but at home, we have habit of keeping things here, there, and everywhere. But if you're very neat and clean, and if you have organized yourself that you will not keep a particular thing on places other than their decided places, their designated places, then it is very good for people with disability, because then they can find it, especially blindness, very easily. Now that is true even for non-disabled people. Otherwise,
Right.
even though you can see, you also keep searching all the time. Are maine chabi kahan rakhi? Half the time we'll go in the morning, and then husband and wife curse each other. Hey, tumne meri chabi nahi dekhi, aapko dhyan rakhna nahi aata, all that, typical Bollywood dialogues. Yeah. So if we want to avoid all those things, let's be all organized, even in your writing. And yeah, one more thing, when you send a soft copy, please don't send images. Images can be read on certain softwares, but they are not the preferred mode of communication. Send written text. I repeat third time, written text. No PDF, JPEG, or any other image format, please. Thank you.
No
No
PNGs,
PNGs, yeah.
So Ketan actually raised a very interesting topic about written text and very difficult to read images. Devina, are you able to see my screen? Just give me a thumbs up like this if you can. Yeah, wonderful, excellent. So I've just shared my screen of an image, and I'm going to ask Ketan. Ketan, what do you see in this image? Can you see anything? I'm saying using the word "see" in a very
No,
deliberate
nothing.
sense.
Nothing.
Because this image does not have alt text, it has not been tagged, so Ketan cannot see anything. But I'm going to show you the same. I'm going to show all of you as well as Ketan the same image with alt text. Alt text is actually alternate text. Okay, so let's look at the same image with alternate text. There it is. It looks the same to us, but suddenly it opens up a whole new world for Ketan, and I'm going to ask Ketan to describe to us what he is able to see now.
Objects from a 17th century Swedish warship. Yeah.
Did you hear what he just said, all of you? He was able to see this image. Now, obviously, he's not able to see it with his eyes the way you and I do, but that leads me to a very philosophical question. Do we really need our eyes to see? What if we could not see with our eyes? Could we also see with our ears? Could we also see with our taste buds? Could we also see with our sense of touch and hearing? What Ketan just did is he demonstrated how he can see using his sense of hearing. So alternate text is something where after you have an image, you use, so today, on all platforms, whether it's Microsoft Word, all the Microsoft platforms, or all the Android platforms, all of them, when you upload an image, you on Twitter, on social media, on Instagram, on Facebook, you have an option of using alternate text to describe that image. And when you use alternate text to describe an image, somebody who cannot see in the traditional and popular sense of the term using his eyes will be able to see it by reading the text, right? Let me give you another example. I'm going to show all of you, including Ketan, an image here, which is labeled without alternate text. Ketan, what do you see?
There are some five elements. I mean, I can't be pronouncing them, but I think they're related to our brain or something like that. Yeah. So now, since this is labeled, I can at least make something out of this. Otherwise, it would be nothing.
So I'm just hoping that all of you have understood in this very brief, with this very brief demonstration, how using alt text to tag images, to label images, would make your communication much more inclusive. That's the topic that we're talking about today, is it not? How to make our communication more inclusive. So we spoke about the oral part where Ketan was talking about when you're speaking to somebody with a hearing impairment, make sure you speak slowly, make sure they allow them to read your lips. Don't move into a, don't change your direction and face somebody else, because then they won't be able to read your lips. Likewise, when it comes to people with visual impairment, as he said, try and avoid sending them an image as much as possible. Now, when I communicate very often with Ketan on WhatsApp, and I can tell you Ketan gets completely mad when I send him an image, because he just can't see what it is, right? At least in the traditional sense of the term. And then he'll call me up, or he'll call somebody else up and say, you sent me something which was not tagged. Could you kindly tag it and send it to me again? Could you kindly describe it and send it to me again? Yes, it does involve a little bit of more work on our side, but I guess that if that time and that work is being spent on making our communication inclusive and making sure that everybody is able to understand and interpret what we have sent them, then I think it just makes the world a more inclusive place. Devina, it makes the world a kinder place. Probably makes the world a more compassionate place. Ketan, anything that you'd like to add here about alt text, your experiences with alt?
No, I would definitely say that all text is an absolute must, especially in these days and times when we are using images more and more. And when we expect a person, because see, a person with disability is no longer a third party. Anybody could get disabled anytime in life, since we live longer and a lot of stress, etc. So alt text is one way and one very definitive way which technology offers us to include everybody. And why not use it? I mean, what stops us from doing it? So make it a habit. You see, this is, you feel extra work so long as it's not your habit. Once you are habituated, I don't think we find anything extra. So make it your habit, and that is where, and habits die hard. The word habit itself it still remains. Even if H goes, a bit remains. And even if A goes, bit remains, and it remains at the end, so it doesn't go. So make it a habit. Yeah. Make it a habit. That is very important.
Wonderful, Ketan. I don't think people are going to forget this lesson very soon, especially in the way you described it about habit. Yeah, we have a question from Ruvina. So Ruvina Fernandez from
Yes,
Sehat Plus.
I will come to that. Yeah, that's a good, I think that was raised even earlier when I was listening to Krishna. There is very easy way of communicating with them. There are two ways of doing it. One is SMSs, because they have braille displays, so they can read in braille. The other is, if you're close to that person, then finger typing. Finger typing. Finger typing, you can type on his palm using your fingers, and you all know the alphabet, so it's easy. You don't have to learn any new trick. And there is also, now there are technology which also converts speech to text. Okay, so if you talk to him, he can read it in real time in braille. So you can communicate. It's just the willingness, you see. It's willingness that is missing somewhere. If there is a will, there's going to be a way. And so inclusive communication should become, all of you who are here on very auspicious time of Christmas and a New Year's resolution. I will not say take a New Year's resolution, because that doesn't really remain beyond January. Make a pledge on Christmas that you will try and communicate as much inclusively as possible. That doesn't mean don't send SMSs, don't send WhatsApp. You can. I think I was.
Yes. Yes. Hello. Yeah, he's just unmuting. We'll give him a second to unmute.
Yeah. So sorry, I was having again the technical difficulty. I don't know why technology is against me today. It's one of those rare days, but yeah. So make it a pledge, Christmas pledge, so that we all become inclusive by habit. Yes, Krishna.
So Ketan was speaking about how you communicate with a person who has both visual and hearing impairment, and he used a word, a term there, which some of you may have not heard before or might be a little confused about. So I'm going to ask him to give us a little more information about that. He said refreshable braille display, and he also said typing on your palms for somebody, right? So I will tell you about what type. So if the person that you're speaking to, I hope you can see my hand. Devina, can you see? Yeah. So if you can just do this, what I'm doing, type on your palm, whether it's a T, whether it's an A, of the person who is deaf as well as blind, then the third sense, which is touch, comes into play. So we have 5 senses. Like I was telling you when Ketan had been blocked out earlier, if one sense is missing, you remember that you still have 4, right? So you just have to keep pegging away, being a little innovative and trying to find some way to communicate, because ultimately the person is intelligent enough to understand what you're saying if you are intelligent enough to communicate it to him. So it's really something that happens, a chemistry that happens between two people. How it happens is up to you and up to your own, for want of a better word, jugaad, whatever jugaad that you would like to apply. But that's what it really is. So Ketan, what exactly is refreshable braille display?
Refreshable braille is a mini computer kind of a thing, which has switches, small switches, which keeps refreshing the braille dots over a period of time, and you can use your fingers to go from line to line, from cell to cell. It's very easy and very fast. So refreshable braille is a new technology. It's no longer, earlier it used to be very expensive. Now it's not so expensive, because we also, India has all jugaad. So India has also started making jugaad of this, and a low-cost refreshable braille display. And you will be surprised to know that India produces low-cost braille displays which are sold in America as American displays. Yeah. So you don't know how powerful our country is. We are just, we have a habit of, underestimating our country. We are very big power. We're providing power to the most powerful. So it is a very good technology, and it even helps the blind to read books on the go. Because some of us who are reading braille, they love reading in Braille and they don't want to waste paper. So it's easy, and I can load as much data as I want because that's on a memory chip. So like you can load huge data, right? So refreshable Braille is connected to a phone, and then if you send SMSs or WhatsApp messages, those can be read by our deaf-blind friends. And even normal talk, as in you can SMS. Now some machines also have come up. I've not seen, but I've heard that when you talk, it converts into text and into Braille immediately in real time. So things are moving very fast, believe me, in technology.
I guess technology is really a huge empowerment, not just for persons without not just for able-bodied persons, but also persons with disabilities. And when Ketan was talking about reading, I said that I shouldn't let him go without asking him, Ketan, what are you reading now? What I know that you're a voracious reader. What were the books that you really remember that shaped you when you were a student, and what are you currently reading?
I've just started Golda Meir's biography, very well-researched biography. Yesterday, Golda Meir, we all know, the ex-prime minister of Israel, much before Mrs. Gandhi, or rather Mrs. Gandhi's contemporary, and much before Mrs. Thatcher, who won in the who had to 1969 to 1973 was the time when she ruled Israel, and was known as a very powerful woman in her era. So I have started reading that, and I have liked a few books. I am a voracious reader. Fortunately, I can speak 4 languages. So I read at least in 3 out of the 4 languages: Hindi, Marathi, and English. Marathi being my first love, English the second, and then Hindi. And Gujarati is my mother tongue, but I hardly read in Gujarati. That's another matter. But so I have liked Not Without My Daughter. I don't know, some of you may have read this book. It's written by an American Iranian person who married into Iran and had a lot of problems in her life, and she somehow escaped with her daughter. It was quite a story, I mean, it's a true story. So that was one book that I really enjoyed. And then there are many. I mean, I'm more into biographies and autobiographies, and sometimes fiction, but not fiction all the time. Yeah. So those kinds of books I enjoy. Biographies. I've read Tony Blair. I've read Bill Clinton. I'm also wanting to now read Barack Obama. I'm waiting for the second volume to come in. Then I want to read both of them together, The Promised Land. So yeah.
Great. I don't know how many of you noticed, but when I asked Ketan about books, most of the books he spoke about were books about politicians and about politics, starting with Golda Meir and then going to Bill Clinton and Obama and Tony Blair and all of that. There's a reason why he did that. The reason he did that was Ketan actually has studied political science. He completed his bachelor's in political science many, many years ago. And after completing his bachelor's in political science, he then went on to do a master's in political science. And not only did he complete a master's in political science, as Devina would know, he also topped Mumbai University when he was in his batch in political science. And you must remember here that when we say somebody topped Mumbai University, there are no special examinations that are available for persons with visual impairment or persons with disabilities. Ketan appeared for the same exam as you and I did, as all of us did. And there he was, right in the honors board, right on top there. So politics is something that Ketan and I discuss a lot. We agree on most things, disagree on a few things, and then we agree to disagree on the things that we don't agree on. But Ketan, we must throw it open to people to ask questions.
Just before that, a couple of rules about oral communication. Many a times somebody mentioned about told by a sighted person is that, well, you guys don't give eye contact, so we don't know whether you're listening. Believe me, we are listening. And in our case, even if we sleep, you won't come to know that I'm sleeping actually, unless of course I shake from here to there. I mean, you won't know, right? Yeah, but that was fun. But more importantly, when you talk to a person, you try and address that person by name or If you're close by, then just touch the person because he won't know that you're talking to him. Sometimes what happens is somebody says good morning, the opposite person doesn't reply because nobody wants to talk to the wall and he doesn't know whether you're talking to him. So that is very important while communicating with a blind person. And when you enter a room or leave a room, please inform you who you are. Please don't ask, did you recognize me? Because nobody wants to be like a machine. Nobody likes to go wrong. And sometimes you may have cold, sometimes you may have had sore throat, or you never know, your voice may have changed. 99 out of 100 times we would recognize your voice. But there are those occasions where we don't, and we don't want to then guess. So these small things, if you remember, I think those will really make lives of both the parties easier. Yeah, now I would expect questions, and I think no question is a fool's question. You can ask absolutely anything about communication. If I can, I will answer. If I can't, then of course we'll pass it.
So the important thing here is that, it's not every day that you get an opportunity to speak to somebody at such a candid level, like you're speaking to Ketan today, about his world, about disability, about inclusion. And he's a lovely guy to chat with. I'm sure you will all agree with what I'm saying. Great sense of humor as well. So if you have any questions, open up, unmute if you'd like and ask your question, or put it in the chat box. We'll give it a couple of minutes. Anybody would like to unmute, just go ahead.
And please do introduce yourself.
Your questions could be about disability, it could be about inclusion, it could be about the lived experience of disability, myths and stereotypes that you might have, anything at all.
Come on, there can't be no questions. Amazing.
I can
Amazing.
start us off. Okay, Soumya, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Ketan. I'm Soumya. I work as a fundraising associate consultant at Atma.
Hi.
Hi. I noticed how Krishna had to mention after he mentioned your amazing achievement, like you were in the honors list. He had to mention that no, you did not give a different exam. You sat for the same exam as everyone else, and that just raised the question in my mind: is that something you get often, where some achievements are undermined in such a way? Just wanted to understand that.
No, he was not undermining. What he was trying to say is that many people think, ठीक है ना, blind लोगों में top किया क्या बड़ी बात है, So he just wanted to make it amply clear that this was a regular exam that is held for everybody, and the same exam was the one that I gave. Actually, I didn't realize that I'll top. I mean, for me it was a surprise. Of course, I had studied a lot, and I was a very if I may go in Hindi, मैं परीक्षार्थी बनना नहीं चाहता हूँ कभी, मैं विद्यार्थी ही रहना चाहता हूँ हमेशा. But so I did study a lot. But having said that, I never thought I'll be topping the class, because at the end of the day, I was also a bit lazy. Never thought I'll top. But yeah, okay. No, they don't undermine. Maybe he was trying to make it a little more clearer to the rest of the listeners.
No, I think, Ketan, what Soumya was asking is whether generally people tend to think like this. If an achievement is put out. I think that's what Soumya was asking.
Yeah, there may be, I don't know, because obviously they won't, even if they do, they won't say that on your face, would they? So one doesn't really know. It's difficult to guess, but I hope not. But having said that, I would also want to say that, people, irrespective of disability, must give their best. As I always say, everybody goes there to bat. We need not bat like Sachin, because everybody is not Sachin. But having said that, we will not stop batting, because unless we bat, how will Sachin's importance be known to the world? कुछ तो चाहिए ना compare करने के लिए. So let's give our best. Yeah.
Anybody else would like to unmute, ask a question?
That's a good question. Low cost tools for people with cerebral palsy.
Ketan, 1 second. Ketan, just 1 second. I don't know how many of you noticed, but Ketan has now begun to read the questions on the chat box using his earphones, right? So that's again a great example of inclusive communication. I did not need to read it out, or Devina did not need. So he's able to read everything that's on his chat box. Yeah, Ketan, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm afraid not really, not low cost India. Now, low cost again is a very relative term, and no, but really not. And cerebral palsy again is again has a spectrum. So it depends how much of difficulty the person has, and then it would be decided whether he or she can be given, but not really, not low cost. No, not that I'm aware of.
So as Ketan was saying, cerebral palsy is a spectrum. In fact, all disabilities are. So when you look at hearing, visual impairment, for example, we just think that a person is blind and we kind of label somebody as blind. But when you say somebody is blind, actually, he could be one of many things. He could be somebody who has, he or she could be somebody who has what is called, you can see what I'm doing, tunnel vision, or they could be having what is called peripheral vision. They can see something at the side. They could be having day blindness, that is that they see in the night but they don't see during the day. Probably it has something to do with
And
the
the
light
reverse,
emitted by the
night
sun.
blindness.
And then there's night blindness, as Ketan was just saying, and then you have color blindness, and you have low vision, you have total blindness, you have somebody who was born blind and who probably has never seen anything from the day he was born, like Ketan. And then you have people who attain blindness later for whatever reason. It could have been a medical condition, it could have been an accident, and some people who become blind at a very young age and are able to adapt much better. Some people who become blind at the age of 40 or 45. Our parents, as you can see in our homes, are slowly beginning to lose sight. So it's a challenge. We have another question from Toran.
Yeah, so I will answer this question. It also depends on what disability we are talking about and what kind of job we're talking about. So skill specific, job specific skills will have to be taught to that person with technological intervention. So if he's blind, he will need screen readers to work on computers. And if he's deaf, then he will have sign language, and there are special hearing aids, special hearing aids. So those things will be required. So it will vary from disability to disability. But of course, there are, it's just the willingness on the part of the employer that is required. So once that is ascertained, then training is possible. And you may contact us at Xavier's Resource Center for Visually Challenged. Although our name says Visually Challenged, we work for all disabilities. Let me make this very clear. We work for all disabilities, and we are a department of St. Xavier's College in Mumbai.
So when Ketan was talking about XRCVC, I just put down the URL for XRCVC.
And I think this is a question. So if you do it often, yourself, then probably that itself could go into encouragement. And whenever you get an opportunity, bolte rahiye. Krishna, go ahead.
Yes. So we have two comments in the chat box. One is
I've taken the one, but you go about the alt text.
Yeah, a very practical question with regard to alt text. How do you create images with alt text? Are there any tools that would help with this? Yes, there are tools that would help with this. I don't know whether we have the time to demonstrate it because we just have about 5 minutes. But what I would suggest you do, Aishwarya, is just look up on YouTube for videos that will tell you how to use alt text. In all our phones, there is actually a place where you can go in a typical Android phone or an Apple phone, and you can actually use alt text in every single document that you create, in every single PowerPoint that you create. It's not very difficult to do that. You just have to right click on the image, and when you right click on the image, it opens up a box which tells you to type out your alt text. So if I were to describe what was happening on this very screen, I would say that there are three faces visible on the screen. One is the lovely Devina Nigam from Atma, one is Ketan Kothari, and one is me. And then on the right hand side of my screen, I have this chat box and I have the number of participants and all. So that's how you would type in any description on your screen to somebody who's not able to read it with his eyes, with his or her eyes, would be able to read it with their ears. We have
Krishna, there is a question, I believe. There's assistive technology. Somebody has asked. So assistive technology in simple terms is something that is helping me, assisting me in trying to overcome my visual disability, like how my screen reader is assistive technology. Nowadays, World Blind Union has also started calling it technology for life, because it also enables us to lead our life in a better way. So assistive technology may include on your phone, for example, in accessibility menu, if you're using Android, then there is something called TalkBack. Then there is assistive touch for those who have difficulties, motor difficulties. Then there are hearing aid compatibility. On your voiceover, on iPhone, there are voiceovers and similar things. So depending on whatever that trying to compensate your disability is assistive technology. I hope I'm answering this question. It's a long answer, but I am trying to just give a very brief description.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
and as one of my colleagues at XRCVC just told me, all the social media sites that we have today have an alt text option. So whether when you're editing pictures, whether you're on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, when you go to a picture, when you right click, you'll find that alt text option, and all that you need to do then is to key in whatever you'd like to key. Devina has just put out a small little form. I hope all of you will fill it. I hope you guys enjoyed this session and chatting with us. Yes.
Chris, and can we take one more question? I think Ravina had one question. What are the ways in which we can encourage the larger community around the person with disability to use inclusive communication as part from the family and friends?
I think you keep doing it yourself around them, and also keep telling people what it is and why it is important, because other than that there is very little that one can really do, because आप किसी को class में बैठा के तो सिखा नहीं पाओगे. You can't be making somebody sit in a room and make that person learn. But yeah, if you keep doing it yourself, then by observing you gradually, people will, it's a kind of a, it's kind of a habit forming. So how do you form a habit? That can be done by a few people starting it, and then trend. आज की भाषा में trend बना दो. Make it a trend. These days this viral. Sorry, I forgot. Now the terminology is so. Make it viral. You keep doing it so often that your friends and families and because ultimately it's a cycle. It's a circle. You have family friends, they will have their families and friends, they will have their it keeps on happening. You try to be our ambassadors. I would say that. Try to be our ambassadors wherever you go. Instead of giving us very good, fancy names, just be positive towards people with disabilities. Doesn't really matter what you call them, but be positive towards them and be inclusive in your overall attitude, because it is beneficial, or it's a win-win situation, right? We don't want to lose a huge population for not doing anything because they're not able to understand your communication. So if you are inclusive in your communication, that's a win-win situation for all the parties.
Yes, Ketan, and since Ketan was talking about going viral and making it an attitude, let me add one more thing that the current generation would understand very well. Probably we have to create FOMO, right? Probably we have to create the fear of missing out. So if somebody is using it and I'm not using it, make the person feel that, oh, I'm missing out on something interesting. I'm missing out on technology, right? So coming back to what I would just like to probably end with, or maybe Devina would like to say something when we close in. But before that, I just wanted to share with all of you that at XRCVC, we conduct an awareness and a sensitization workshop, which is called Antar Chakshu. Antar Chakshu actually is a Sanskrit word. Chakshu means the eye and Antar means within. So Antar Chakshu actually stands for the eye within, where we give people a small lived experience of what it is to be disabled, We give them an experience of a disability, and after that, we sit and discuss with them. It's a very popular, excuse me, very popular sensitization and an awareness program, which we've conducted all over India, not only in India, but also abroad, where we had an opportunity to do it for different audiences, whether it's universities or offices or corporates or students or NGOs, just anybody who has an open mind and a big heart. We'd be happy to come across and conduct a small little workshop for you, which is called Antarchakshu. If you go to our website, www.xrcvc.org, you'll certainly be able to read more about it. But I'm also going to type in Ketan's email address here, so that if you have any questions, you can directly send them to Ketan. I'm sure he'll be very happy. Here it is. As I type it out, Devina, if there's anything that you would like to add.
Um, no, I think any such conversation is always so enriching. So I want to thank both of you. I'm also, in addition, I'm just gonna
You've gone on mute, Devina.
sorry. I was saying that in addition, I did want to also just type in the chat box my three key takeaways. I'm sure all of us have our own learnings from this conversation, from this discussion. I just want to thank both of you for taking the time out and actually telling us a little bit about inclusion. How can we be more inclusive? I know there is a lot that we could discuss, talk about. There's a lot of work we all need to do. I think personally and professionally in the organizations that we work in. But this is, I'm hoping, just the start of many such conversations and the slight change that we can bring about to just make everything inclusive and accessible. Um, Before we actually conclude, I did want to call out that the first two emailers that were sent out for this webinar were actually not accessible. We did include all text. So the XRCVC team and Atma team sat down to include text to the images in the mailer. So at any point in time, anybody who wants to know more about this, please reach out to Krishna, Ketan, or we'll be happy to support you as well. With that, thank you so much for joining. Hope everybody found this useful. Thank you.
Yes, Devina, I just put out a message there saying there's so much to discuss. Come over for a cup of coffee. We'd love to have coffee with all of you. Ketan?
Bye for all. Bye to all. Sorry. What am I? And hope to see you someday somewhere, preferably here in Xavier's. As Krishna said, get lovely tea and coffee here.
Yeah.
Great.
Bye.
Merry Christmas and a very happy New Year to all of you.
Wish you all the same.